Charles Benedict was a man who had everything: wealth, power, a sprawling estate, and a mansion that rose like a monument to his success. His life seemed perfect from the outside, but deep inside, there was an emptiness, a loneliness that no money could fill. He had built his empire, yet it seemed to stand on the foundations of sand. One day, while looking for someone trustworthy to care for his grand mansion, he came across Jacob Turner, a humble farmer known for his integrity and simple lifestyle. The job was simple: tend to the gardens, ensure the mansion remained clean, and keep an eye on the place while Charles was away on business. Jacob, needing the extra income to support his modest family, accepted the offer. What began as a simple agreement soon spiraled into a story of betrayal, secrets, and heartbreak, culminating in a moment so shocking that it would change both their lives forever. Title: A millionaire hired a humble farmer to take care of his mansion. But one day, arriving home earlier, he started to cry when he saw what he had done. Charles had inherited wealth but made his fortune grow tenfold through shrewd business ventures. His estate was known across the country, not only for its grandeur but for its meticulous upkeep. Every flower in the garden was carefully selected, every corner of the house spotless, and the mansion itself stood as a symbol of Charles's obsession with control and perfection. Despite all this, Charles was a lonely man. His wife had left him years ago, tired of living in a gilded cage. They had no children, and his friends were mere acquaintances, drawn to him more for his wealth than his personality. He lived for his work and the thrill of building something bigger, but there was always a gnawing sense of dissatisfaction. Jacob Turner, on the other hand, was a man of the earth. He lived in a modest cottage on a small farm with his wife, Sarah, and their 2 children. His days were spent working the land, and though they never had much, they had enough. Jacob was known around town for his kindness and honesty, traits that made him the perfect candidate to look after the mansion. When Charles offered Jacob the job, it seemed like a blessing. The pay was generous, and it required only a few hours of work each day, tending the garden, keeping the mansion in order, and reporting anything unusual. In return, Jacob would have access to a small portion of the estate where he could grow extra crops and sell them at the market. It was an offer too good to refuse. Jacob, ever the hard worker, took pride in his new responsibilities. He treated the mansion as if it were his own, tending the gardens with the same care he gave his farm, ensuring the house sparkled as it did when Charles lived there. Over time, he developed a deep affection for the mansion. It wasn't just a place of work, it became almost a second home, a place where he found peace away from the struggles of his own farm. For several months, Charles traveled, leaving Jacob in charge of the estate. He would occasionally visit, always pleased with how well Jacob maintained the place. They barely spoke, but Charles saw in Jacob a dedication and humility that intrigued him. Yet, something began to change inside Charles. On one of his visits, he noticed the mansion felt different. It was hard to put into words, but there was a warmth in the house that hadn't been there before, a sense of life that contrasted sharply with the sterile perfection it once held. One evening, returning from a particularly successful business trip, Charles arrived home earlier than expected. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. As he stepped out of his car, he saw something that made him pause. In the distance, on the back porch of the mansion, Jacob was sitting with his family. They were laughing, talking, as if it were their home. At first, Charles felt a twinge of anger. This was his mansion, his sanctuary. But as he watched them, something else stirred within him, something he hadn't felt in years: envy. For the next few days, Charles kept a close eye on Jacob. He noticed little things: the way Jacob's children played in the garden, how Sarah sometimes hung laundry on the line behind the house, how the family ate meals together on the patio. They weren't doing anything wrong, but they had begun to live in the mansion as if it were their own. And strangely, the mansion seemed happier for it. One evening, while Jacob's family was enjoying a simple dinner on the lawn, Charles found himself drawn to them. He watched from the shadows, his heart heavy. They laughed so easily, so freely, something he hadn't done in years. His mansion, the symbol of his success, had never felt so alive, but it wasn't because of him. It was because of them. Torn between anger and sorrow, Charles retreated to his study, where he poured himself a glass of scotch. He stared out the window at the family below, the warmth of their interactions making the emptiness inside him all the more profound. The next day, Charles decided to confront Jacob. He called him into the grand library, the air thick with tension. "Jacob," Charles began, his voice cold and formal. "I've noticed some changes around here." Jacob shifted uncomfortably, sensing something was wrong but unsure what. "I've been doing my best to keep the place in order, sir." "It's not the upkeep I'm concerned about," Charles replied, his eyes narrowing. "It's the way you and your family have made yourselves at home." Jacob's face paled. I'm sorry, Mr. Benedict. I didn't mean to overstep. It's just that with you being away so often, the house felt empty, and my family." "You've overstepped," Charles interrupted, his voice rising. "This is my home. My mansion. Not yours. You were hired to take care of it, not live in it like it's your own." Jacob stood there, stunned and ashamed. He hadn't realized how deeply his family's presence had affected Charles. He had only wanted to bring some life to the empty halls, to share the beauty of the estate with the people he loved. But now, standing before his employer, he realized he had crossed a line. "I'll pack our things and leave immediately," Jacob said quietly, his heart heavy with guilt. Charles watched him go, but as soon as the door closed behind Jacob, a wave of regret washed over him. He had everything: a mansion, money, power, but he had never known the kind of happiness Jacob had. The laughter, the love, the simple joys of life, those were the things he had lost in his pursuit of success. And now, in a fit of jealousy and anger, he had pushed away the very people who had brought life back to his home. Unable to sleep that night, Charles wandered through the mansion, haunted by the silence that had once been his comfort. The walls seemed colder, the rooms darker. The warmth that Jacob's family had brought was gone, and in its place was the hollow echo of his own loneliness. The next morning, Charles made a decision. He drove to Jacob's farm, where the family was quietly preparing to return to their simple life. Jacob was surprised to see Charles pull up, and even more surprised when he saw the expression on his face, a mixture of remorse and vulnerability. "Jacob, I need to talk to you," Charles said, his voice softer than before. "I was wrong. You and your family, you made that house feel like a home. I've been so caught up in my own world, in my own success, that I forgot what really matters." Jacob stared at him, unsure what to say. "I don't want you to leave," Charles continued. "In fact, I want you to come back. Not just as the caretaker, but as a part of this place. Your family brought life to my mansion in a way I never could. And I've realized I don't want to be alone anymore." Tears welled up in Jacob's eyes, and he nodded, understanding the weight of Charles's words. In the weeks that followed, the mansion transformed into something new, not just a symbol of wealth, but a place filled with life and love. Jacob and his family moved back in, but this time, they did so with Charles's blessing. They shared meals together, worked in the garden side by side, and slowly, Charles began to heal. For the first time in years, Charles Benedict was no longer just a millionaire with a mansion. He was a man with a family, one he had found in the most unexpected of ways. And as the sun set over the estate each evening, the mansion stood not as a monument to success, but as a testament to the simple, irreplaceable joys of life that no amount of money could ever buy. End.